Call the Grimes City Council meeting of April 28th, 2026 to order. Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, roll call, please.
DePhillip, here. Earlbeck, here. Johansson,
Here.
Lovelady,
Here.
Corcoran.
I'm here. All right, thank you. That brings us to approval of the agenda.
To approve.
Second. Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call.
Earlbeck. Aye. Johansson.
Aye.
Lovelady.
Aye.
DePhillip. Aye. Corcoran.
Aye. All right, that passes. That brings us to item 5, public forum. Anybody signed up for public forum?
Just one person.
Okay, just a reminder, 3 minutes, and we do have a clock on there to kind of help aid you with budgeting that time. Whoever.
Gravis Alger.
Okay, come on up, state your name and address, and then, yeah.
Gravis Alger, 2020 Southeast, 44th Court. Just kind of have a gripe. I have a property I just purchased and been working with development services for 6 weeks now to answer a simple question on whether or not my property has to have a sprinkler system. And before that, I worked with the fire department, didn't get an answer there. They sent me to development services. Been told every single week that I'd have an answer. And then it got to about 2 weeks ago that any day I'd have an answer. And then it'd be today at the close of business, I'd have an answer. And multiple calls into Alex, no response. Last week I went in there and they were gone for a trip in Detroit, but can't develop a city if you don't have a development team. That's all I got.
And just for clarity first, is this like an apartment or a commercial?
It's a warehouse.
It's a warehouse.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
That'll help us. Thank you. All right, anybody else signed up for public forum?
No, sir.
All right. All right, well, we will definitely, ask some questions and hopefully we can get you a resolution and figure out what's going on. That brings us to item 6, approval of the consent agenda.
I'll move it.
Second.
Moved and seconded by Lori, we'll say. It was a tie though, I think. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Corcoran.
Aye.
DePhillip. Aye. Lovelady.
Aye.
Earlbeck. Aye. Johansson.
Aye. All right, thank you. That passes. That brings us to item 1 on the action items. And that is Beaverbrook West Plot 4 Mill and Overlay.
And you screwed the Brookside and Beaverbrook. I get those screwed up all the time. Yeah, we had a project that we bid out here it was last week called Beaverbrook West Plat 4 Mill and Overlay. This is a couple of maps from our pavement management study, and you can kind of see there's 2 maps here. The first one on this side is basically a pavement index, and you kind of see that the area that we're targeting is this area right here. And it's not terrible. There's a light cyan blue, which means it's a fair condition, and then the lighter blue is a little better. What you want to see is all the purple. But the other map over here is your deterioration index, which means it's the rate of deteriorating in that area. And you can see that a lot of the same streets that are over there are red and yellow, which is bad. And additionally, they're also PCC curb and gutter with an asphalt inlay inside them too. And so the condition of the asphalt kind of goes faster than a PCC street will. And so you have to do more maintenance on that every, 10 to 15 years. The neighborhood here is getting up there in age. So it's getting to that point where we need to consider doing a mill and overlay to get the surface back to par. We did one of these last year on Northwest 10th Court. Had a really bad condition road. It was a kind of a long cul-de-sac. kind of milled that one, fixed a couple of the PCC curbs, and then overlaid it, and now it's in pretty decent condition again. So that's kind of the condition, the idea behind this project. There's kind of the map that kind of shows the streets highlighted there that we're targeting. We're trying to come into the neighborhood here and kind of get these all done at one time. These are all kind of in the same condition. Some of them are worse than others, but we want to figure if we're coming in, we might as well get everything done at once. We did have 4 bids on the project last week. The engineer's estimate was about $503,708, and we were under that with a low bid of $425,915. And Des Moines Asphalt and Paving was the low bidder on the project. So this, like I said, this project is basically coming into this neighborhood and trying to get these streets back to the level that they should be for that. This project is scheduled to start in May sometime with a notice to proceed. There'll be 30 working days to get it done, and we'll have about $1,000 per calendar day for noncompliance with those completion provisions. Our actions tonight are to hold the public hearing, adopt the plan specs, form a contract and estimate to make award, and approve the contracts and bonds. City staff has worked a lot with Des Moines Asphalt and Paving before on various projects and feel that they're fully capable of completing a project of this size. Staff would recommend holding the public hearing and doing all the resolutions. This project is funded through a line item in the RUT fund for asphalt work, specifically set aside for asphalt work. The residents in this neighborhood have all been sent letters, I think either this Monday or the end of last week, inviting them to a public information meeting at the library on May 6th from 5:30 to 6:30. Give them an opportunity to come in and ask us questions and see how it's going to go. If they have concerns or anything, that we can kind of address those at that time and let them know what's going to be happening. And the last thing is this project was completely designed in-house with our engineering staff, and we'll do the inspection part of it too, in-house too. So we're kind of getting that benefit too for the project. So that's about all I had to open it up here.
Yeah, council, before any questions, we'll hold the public hearing. So at this time, we'll hold the public hearing on plan specifications, form of contract and estimate of cost for the Beaverbrook West Plot 4 mill and overlay. Does anybody wish to address council on this specific item? No one, is there any written communication?
Nope.
All right, at this time, we'll close the public hearing. Council, do you have any questions for Matt, other than just noting a lot of really good people live in this neighborhood and I'm sure they'll be excited about it.
What do we expect the life expectancy of the overlay to be?
And generally, you're looking at a 10 to 15-year expectancy on
Okay.
asphalt.
And then as far as road closures, what's the access for residents? Is there?
They will be out for certain periods of time. They'll probably come in and they'll mill everything down, and then everybody can drive on the milled road for a while. And then they'll come in and start doing pieces of it. And while they're doing those pieces of it, you'll be out of the driveways, and they'll have to notify everybody, of course. And then once they're done and the asphalt's kind of cooled off, then they can get back to their driveways. They should be back in that same day.
Okay.
So
So maybe you have to park along the street down the block.
yeah, and they'll do it in sections too each day, so they're not going to have the entire everybody having to park somewhere at once, which would be a kind of a circus.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Sure.
And Matt, to that point on the 10 to 15 years, I mean, there's like a cost benefit thing, because you could do like a whole new road, and that's gonna cost substantially more, take way more time, and
Yeah.
but I mean, life
There's-
expectancy.
Yeah, there's cost benefits to things. PCC lasts longer. You don't have to do as much with it, but asphalt needs more maintenance and more routine maintenance on it. And so, there are life cycle things. I mean, both things have their pros and cons. Generally, we like to lean more towards the PCC concrete in town, like we're doing subdivisions and new streets and stuff. But back when they put this one in, that they chose that option of doing the PCC curves with the asphalt in the middle, and that is a choice. So it's just one that we have to have a different maintenance schedule on.
Certainly needed. I've driven many of those streets, and It's potholy.
Yeah.
It's bumpy.
Council, any other questions?
I appreciate that, again, we continue to keep track of all the roads in the city and, inspect those routinely, and where we need maintenance and upkeep, we do those. We're not always focused on just the next big thing. It's we're continually monitoring things throughout the city as a whole and stepping in and doing the work. So appreciate that.
And that's where the pavement management study has helped out tremendously too, is targeting those areas that are worse off and that need to be done. We also have areas maybe that are worse than this area, but this area has good water mains and some other stuff underground that is still in good shape, that other places that may need the street more have other problems underground that we have to fix first. So it's kind of a sequencing thing.
Given that we didn't seem to have a lot of negative comments, I would move resolution 04-5126, 04-5226, and 04-5326 for approval.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call.
Johansson,
Aye.
Earlbeck. Aye. DePhillips. Aye. Borkerding.
Aye.
Lovelady.
All right, those motions pass. Thank you, Matt. Appreciate it. Item 2, ordinance 812 imposing franchise fees on Black Hills, Iowa Gas Utility Company LLC, Black Hills Energy and Mid-American Energy Company in the amount of 3% of the gross revenues derived by the companies from the sale and distribution of electricity and natural gas to customers within the corporate limits of the city pursuant to Iowa Code Section 364.2 and 384.3A. Jake, you gonna give us some background on this?
Yep, so we discussed this at length during your annual budget workshop. This ordinance and the imposition of the gas and electric franchise fee will generate about $700,000 at the time of the budget workshop. We were estimating the revenue would be $717,000. The ordinance does exempt public schools from the imposition of the fee. And the value of that exemption is about $17,000 to $18,000 annually. This is necessary to fund the public safety positions that are contemplated in the budget. At the meeting last time, you approved a revenue purpose statement that said that you use the revenues exclusively to pay for the cost of public safety services. And then you said a hearing on this ordinance. We've got information that we've put out on the city's social media pages, communicating about this. I attended, along with Chief Coleman and Sheriff Snyder, a lunch and learn that the chamber had put on, where we talked to the community about this. The 3% gas and electric franchise fee for the average residential customer amounts to about $2.71 per month. That's the background I've got for you.
Okay, thank you, Jake. At this time, we'll have the public hearing on ordinance 812. Does anybody wish to address council on this specific item? Yeah, go ahead and come on up. State name and address.
Dave Liska, 601 Southwest Timberview. I don't speak in public, so it's a little uncomfortable for me. I love the sheriff's office being in our town, and I so appreciate the fire department. My parents lived with us before they both passed. We've used them a number of times. I'm all for it. That's all I want to say. So,
Well, thank you.
thank you.
Appreciate that. Anybody else wish to address council on this specific item? Yes, sir.
Good evening. My name is Leroy Edge. I live at 900 Northeast 12th Street. I'm just here. I'm a retiree, and I think anytime there's any type of new fees imposed, there should be some due diligence. And I'm not saying you haven't done that. And I think there probably is a need. We're a growing community, but with our tax base, I think, growing exponentially with all the new homes, I would have hoped there would have been money to cover these positions. So I understand budgeting, it is an issue. You got to look for money. But I'm just wondering if new fees is a way to do it. You're proposing a 3% fee. I understand that the legislature approved a year or two ago that cities could go up to a 5% fee. Is this just a way to get your foot in the door on this? And down the road, you'll ask for another 2%. And down the road, will the state allow higher percentages? Is that the way this is going to go? You're taxing electric and gas, and I guess I'd like to know why those two utilities are being taxed. Is that what's within allowed
We'll,
for the fee?
we'll address.
Okay.
When we have, yeah.
Sure,
Mhm.
okay. And when you're looking at electric and gas use, I'm guessing there are a lot of businesses that use more. Are you looking at them picking up the brunt of this tax? Okay, just ask that. I know with the fire and emergency services, we share that with Johnston. Is Johnston doing something similar with the franchise fee, or are they covering those expenses in a different way? Also, another question. We have a number of, I'm guessing, older homes in the community. Are those homes less efficient? Will those people pay more on average than somebody with newer, more efficient homes? If you have homes with solar panels where they have reduced their bill maybe to nothing, and there's no fee on them, so are they not being taxed for this in that case? So that's all the questions that I had, but once again, wanting to do due diligence that this is the right thing to be doing. And I understand, you're looking at property taxes, this supposedly it'd be more, but I'm not quite understanding that part of it. So, but thank you for listening to me.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Anybody else wish to address council on this specific item? Okay, hearing none, any written communication?
No, sir.
All right, with that, at this time, we'll close the public hearing, and take up ordinance, the first consideration of ordinance 812, imposing the franchise fee. And because this is a specific item on the agenda, it is okay and appropriate to address some of the comments we heard this evening. So Jake, I don't know if you want to tackle maybe a couple of those.
Yeah, I don't know that I got all the questions answered there, but kind of working backwards. Yeah, I mean, if you've got solar, and you don't pay an electric bill, probably are not subject to the fee. It's a flat fee applying across, customer classes. So if commercial properties pay higher gas and electric bills, they pay 3% there. It does impact them, on a dollar for dollar basis more. The way it works, the average home in Grimes is assessed at just shy of $400,000. And so if we were applying a property tax rate to generate $700,000, it would cost the average homeowner in Grimes about $100 a year, as opposed to the $30 a year it cost, based on what the utilities tell us is the average residential gas and electric bill.
And I can feel some of the rest too. I didn't mean to put you on the hot seat.
Yeah,
but,
no.
That's a shifting, right? You're somehow shifting here, the cost from one party to another.
Yeah, so at this point, public forum is the time to address council, so, but I'm happy to talk to you after the meeting. So just for clarity, for just point of order.
And maybe for further clarity, this is the first consideration. There'll be another meeting where there'll be a second consideration, a third consideration. So this will not be your final time to address council on this issue. We'll have multiple council meetings on it.
in Johnston or, well, let me try to take a stab at this. And I think this is helpful for context and why we are considering it. There are state laws that have limited how much our levy rate can grow. And that limit on the levy rate growth for the general fund, which is what we use to pay for employees, in this case, fire and police would be part of that. It is limited by state law, and we cannot grow as fast as our tax base is growing. So it can't keep up because of a law that is upon us by the state, which kind of puts us in a tough position. You know, a couple ways to do that is you could try to play a shell game and steal from other pots and whatnot. That gets a little hairy and, you know, questionable. You could do like we're doing here, add a new levy to create new revenue that can be used for this purpose by law. Johnston, our neighbor, already has this. Is theirs 3 or 5?
I believe it's
I believe Johnston's 5. Yeah, it's 3 or 5. I can't remember which though. Okay, 5. I saw a couple hands say 5. So they're already doing this and getting the benefit of that. Now we're doing 3 now. Is this a foot in the door to get to 5? That has also been discussed in some previous meetings at length. You know, I think the council feels like 3 can cover what we are asking now, and to go for more feels maybe in some ways greedy, and you're taking more without a plan of what necessarily to do with that other 2%. Can I guarantee it won't grow to 5? No, I cannot. But I don't think anybody up here has expressed our goal is to do 3 so we can then up it later. 3 is sort of, I think, the mixture of where everybody up here sort of sat. Some of us kind of think maybe felt 5. Some of us feel 0, and I'm sure you'll hear that in a little bit. 3 is sort of, you know, where the majority of council has representation. So I think that's more about why 3 than anything else. The fact that's where the majority is, and the fact that 3 could cover the ask that's before us. So, and so that's kind of answering some of those questions, and I'm happy to talk more afterwards. But also I think it does provide some good background on the matter. But council, any other things you want to discuss or talk about in relation to this ordinance?
I would just piggyback off of like the 3 to versus 5%. Landing at 3% also came with a lot of considerations of things that the city wasn't going to move forward with. And so there were additional asks that we felt like didn't need to be pursued at the expense of needing to go for the additional 2%. And so there were still a lot of give and take and kind of a conservative approach of hearing from the public and how much that increased public safety, both on the fire and the police side, is a strong preference. The 3% is what majority felt would get us to kind of that kind of landing place where we thought this isn't funding all of the staff's asks, but this allows us to feel pretty comfortable with what we could fund for public safety.
I'd be at the 0% on that end of the spectrum on this one. Listen, I don't disagree with my colleagues here on how the money shakes out. So we're looking at what's our total on public safety growth here, Jake? 1.5?
Yeah, 1.4.
About $1.4 million in increase. It's just the increase in public safety expenses just in this calendar year. So that's a very large increase. There's only so many different ways that you can pay for that. And so personally, I was much more in favor of a smoothing technique that do we need to hire all of those positions July 1, or can we smooth that out over the year, which then helps budgetarily? You end up in the same position though next year. Next year it would be the full 1.4 million, and it would increase because the problem that we have here is that the rate of increase in those expense line items for public safety is growing faster than our revenue increases. And that is not to do with the growth of the city. That's just the limitations, as Mayor Gish pointed out. our budget can only grow so much. And unfortunately or fortunately, that's just life. And so we're stuck in this quandary of you either have to say no to some hiring positions that we're not debating whether or not those were justified. What we're debating is, can we afford them? And at some point, our pie will continue to eat up more and more of that pie that pays for every other staff member as well, parks staff and all sorts of other things. More and more of that pie will get eaten up by public safety because it's growing faster and has a higher expense than what the rest of our city government can grow. And we're locked in at what our funding sources are. So we've got two funding sources essentially that are afforded to us under state code as property taxes, and it's some form of sales tax, right? Lost, which we've already implemented. And then this franchise fee concept that is capped at 5%, as many have noted. Once you get to those 5% and we've already at our 1%, we are capped. There are no more levers to pull. There's no more pots of money out there that we can try to take from. That's it. That's the end of the game. And so then we can go through and try to increase property taxes every year to the maximum allowed. But again, state law has capped that. And so while I'll be voting no today on the first consideration of this ordinance, I do not negate the need for more firefighter professionals and EMTs, especially really that public safety component and more deputies on the roads. We are a growing community. We need more public safety professionals, period. Not going against that. The question is, can we afford it in the long run? And so just as we have, the past 10 years I've been on this council, looked to the future and said, hey, we need to make decisions not just for today, but looking 10, 15, 20, 30 years into the future. My concern here is that we have a growth trajectory, again, that does not match, it is not parallel to, it is steeper than our revenue. And at some point, those are going to cross and we'll be in a little bit of hurt. And so I'll be voting no. I don't think the franchise fee was the right course in my mind. It is a course that is afforded to us, and I completely understand why my colleagues decided to go down that path. Save more comments for another time so everybody can get on with their dinner, but happy to talk to people afterward as well.
Yeah, thank you for those comments, Councilman Johansson. Any other
I'll
comments?
just I guess counter that because I was on the opposite end as Councilmember Johansson. I was in favor of the 5% fee. A lot of the same things that Eric just spoke about is why I was on that, or where my head was at with that is we are behind in staffing for public safety, and we have been behind. We have over the past several years lowered taxes, and I have voted to lower taxes, but part of that has put us in the position we're in. And I see this as, if we don't start taking care of this now, it's just going to keep getting worse. And it feels like we're kicking the can down the road. I would prefer to staff up as much as possible now as we are seeing growth just increase and increase. And we know not just fire, but our police presence is needed to increase as well. So I'm very much in favor of it, not because I'm in favor of raising taxes. I'm certainly not. I also pay them, as we all do. But the reality is we don't have enough staff, and public safety is one of my top priorities and one of the things that I talk to most residents about as well. So that's where I was, is kind of on the opposite end. So as Mayor Gish pointed out, I think we spent a lot of time in a couple different meetings really talking through this and trying to get to a spot that's in the middle, which is something that I think isn't always seen or known, that what we do as a council is try to find common ground, because we are coming from different perspectives and we talk to different people and we represent everybody. And so we're trying to find the right solution that does represent everybody. And what a lot of you are seeing now, which I think is good to see, is seeing that play out, that we talk through this as a group and kind of figure out what really does make sense from multiple perspectives.
Yeah, and I voted for a bake sale, but Jake told me I probably couldn't raise $700,000. So I just kind of wanted to talk because I was hoping to have more of a presence at the chamber meeting that talked about this, but we did have a turnout there, but I was initially at the 5%. I settled on the 3% because I do believe currently we don't need the 5%. Could we next year? It very likely could be. So I'm never going to sit here and say next year we might not need the 2%. But I think it is irresponsible to ask for 2%, even if just for 1 year, if we don't need it now. But a lot of people have asked, why don't we just go to 5? Why don't we rip the Band-Aid off? But that's the whole reason why. We don't want to hold money that we don't need for the time. Plus, this will be a big increase in the public safety and fire that we haven't had for years. So we need to see how this coverage works. We need to give it a year and see how it works. So that's just a little input that we had from that meeting. But overall, I think it went really well. And there's a lot of positives about, bringing on a 3% or possibly 5% in the future.
Yeah, thank you for those comments. And I think that's a good point too, about see how this shakes out and see what our response rates are, and also continue to monitor. We had one of the largest increases in fire EMS calls in the metro this last year. Is that going to continue? And if it does, yeah, it might look one way, and maybe that'll shake out and smooth out a little next year. And yeah, so we'll have to see how that goes for sure. And I have to reiterate something Jake brought up, is that, like Lori said, and I think a lot of people up here would echo, nobody likes raising taxes or adding a fee. But in terms of the bottom dollar to the households, the fee is the more efficient way to do this, as how it affects households. Doing it through the levy would take more per household than with the franchise fee. So I think that's something worth reiterating for what that's worth. But with that, council, any other?
Just to be clear on that though.
Yes.
While we are exempting public schools, which are nonprofits, other nonprofits in the community which don't pay property taxes because they're nonprofits will have to pay this fee. So when you start looking around at properties that are in town that have gas and electric bills, those nonprofits will pay a 3% fee, whereas if we were to assess a property tax on them or increase that, they would not be paying that. Additionally, when you look through property tax versus franchise fee, look at most apartment complexes have individual meters for each apartment, meaning each individual pays a gas and electric bill. They will be assessed. They don't have an individual property tax bill in an apartment complex. And so those are some of the differences. When I think the question was asked, where's the money coming from? Why is it different per household on average to pay property taxes than a franchise fee? Those are some of the reasons. Different. It's kind of not apples and oranges, but apples and carrots a little bit.
Yeah. Well, that's good. Thank you for the additional context.
Yeah, and I'll be real brief. I think everybody up here is not excited to implement this. We wish we had other measures to this. We wish the legislature hadn't made some changes on the amount of revenue that we can continue to capture from growth that has kind of put us into this situation. But, as Councilman Johansson pointed out, we've only got so many levers that we can pull to fund. I would say, Chief Coleman, Polk County Sheriff did a good job providing data around why these positions are needed. As Lori pointed out, I think some have been needed for a while. I think we do a good job making data-driven decisions, even though, to Eric's point, we could probably smooth some things out, but I do think they are needed. And again, we landed on the 3% because, I personally feel like we shouldn't take more money than what we need. If we didn't have a plan for it, let's not take it. If we need the 2% down the road because we're in a bind still, which might happen because Councilman Johansson pointed out a very valid comment that we are going to run into issues with public safety in the future as those costs continue to grow, and we won't have the revenue to continue to to support those at the current rate without cutting other things. So with that though, I am in support, but it doesn't feel great to have to do it. And I think there's going to be harder conversations in the future surrounding some of this.
And just out of an abundance of caution for the general public, different pots of money. So when you see a building going up in town or a street overlay project, that is a completely different pot of money that cannot be used for personnel. That's only for infrastructure. And so we are not, trying to play a shell game here of, well, why didn't you just not have play equipment in at the park? Well, it's a different pot of money that we couldn't have used anyway. And so we are really, to some extent, hand tied on the pot of money that we have to use to pay for personnel.
Council, any action on the first consideration?
I will move first consideration of ordinance 812 imposing franchise fees.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call.
DePhilip. Aye. Lovelady.
Aye.
Earlbeck.
Aye.
Workerding.
Aye.
Johansson.
No.
Okay, that passes. And I really appreciate council, the civil debate on this. That means a lot to me, and I think the public at large. So, thank you for that. That brings us to item 3, public hearing on the proposed fiscal year 2026-2027 budget. Marcia?
So the proposed budget for fiscal year 26-27 does incorporate council's direction from the workshops held on February 10th and 16th, which does hold the property tax levy steady at the current rate of 10.6992 per thousand of taxable value. Council held the required public hearing on the proposed tax levy rate on April 14th, prior to setting today's date for the public hearing. Notice was published on April 20th. The budget does fund the CIP for 27 and all debt payments. The debt service levy remains steady at $2.65. The required 50% use of loss for tax reduction has been built into the budget and is used to help fund employee benefits and IPERS, including some of those for public safety. The proposed budget has planned expenses and transfers that are just over $98,444,000 for the upcoming fiscal year. We budgeted revenues and transfers of just over $94,538,000 with a plan to utilize more capital fund dollars that we are receiving here in May with our 2026 GO issuance. This does also include the proposed franchise fees built into it. Per our standard course of business, council can expect at least one budget amendment next year as our planning for 12 to 15 months out provides some unknowns. And the budget will be finalized after the meeting tonight and filed with the Department of Management and Polk and Dallas counties prior to the April 30th deadline.
All right. At this time, we'll hold the public hearing on the proposed fiscal year budget. Does anybody wish to address council on this? No, we need a
sorry.
public hearing?
We
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
My apologies.
No, it's all right. I've had that kind of day.
Sub.
Yeah.
Switching it up.
I told him to do that just for you.
Turn me
So we'll open the public hearing on this specific item. Anybody wish to address council? Seeing none, any written communication?
Nope.
Okay, at this time we'll close the public hearing. And that brings us to consideration of resolution 04-4126, approving the city of Grimes annual fiscal year 26-27 budget. Council, any conversation or action on this?
Just a question, is now an appropriate time for a question? Or
Yeah.
sure? Okay, just a question, if for some reason we weren't to move forward at this point with the franchise fee, what would the process look like with our budget, and then what path forward would be logistically take?
So most likely what would happen is come July, we would ask for an amendment because we would probably need to be doing some changes because we wouldn't be able to pay for everything. It would probably mean some
Yeah, and if you
possible-
need policy direction from the council, in order to proceed, you need to amend your budget to cut expenses out. Which either means that you're not funding the public safety S, or if you want to stand by those things, we gotta find a way to take them out of the other departments. and
And-
reduce services elsewhere.
And just to be clear, setting the budget really is just setting the levy rate. How that necessarily gets spent is a different conversation. In absence of a franchise fee, that conversation then has to occur.
Right.
Is basically,
Yeah.
is that accurate?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, your annual budget is an exercise of funding your priorities. But the policy decision that is baked into it is, what is your property tax rate gonna be? Budgets can be amended, you go throughout the year, you get grants, maybe grants don't come through. You have to make management and policy decisions throughout the year, manage your spending. At this point in time, like Marcia said, we're forecasting a little bit more, about 15 months down the road. It's our best guess. Things happen over time. If the franchise fees don't materialize, you'll have to give us policy direction on how to cure that in your spending plan.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, it's a good fair question.
The only thing I'd maybe clarify on that is it's not just your property tax, it's really all funding streams. So that would include
Yes.
loss projections are factored in to the extent, as Marcia pointed out, and these franchise fee to Councilwoman Earlbeck's point. It's really all of your funding streams and how they all play together in order to fund the priorities that we've set forth at the levels that we've set forth. So
Yes.
I'll be voting no on the budget, shockingly. Continued from our previous conversations on the franchise fee. Again, our growth trajectory here on spending, period. Not getting into all of the different things, although I'd be happy to on where we're spending, but it's just, it's not sustainable in the long run. And so for that reason, I'll be voting no on the budget.
Council, any other comments or action?
Yeah, I did want to point out too, what a couple of the points we've made throughout this is we are not going to raise, or we're proposing not to raise the tax levy. So it's going to remain the same. One of my fellow council members in Ankeny also posted the levy rate of about 20 of the metro neighboring cities around here. We're in the top 5 lowest out of all the metros around here. So we have done a pretty good job keeping that levy rate pretty low as it comes to other metros around us. So, I mean, the other side of that coin is raising that. And like we said, raising those raises the cost on every individual quite a bit more than the franchise fee does. So just want to point that part out.
I would move to approve the proposed fiscal year 26-27 budget.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call.
Earlbeck,
Aye.
DePhillips. Aye. Borkerty.
Aye.
Lovelady.
Aye.
Johansson.
No.
Okay, that passes. That brings us to item 4, which is a public hearing on the proposed second amendment to the fiscal year 25-26 budget. And so Marcia's going to give us some background on that.
As we spoke about, we are at that point where we are needing to amend because cities are required to amend their budget prior to expending additional funds in a fiscal year. This is the second amendment. We did have a prior one in November as we had to make a payment to CIWW for our buy-in to them. As budgets are prepared over a year in advance, the city always incurs the unexpected expenses. So this is our normal course of business. We did set the public hearing date on April 14th and published the notice on the 20th. This amendment provides for additional expenses for the library buildings and grounds repair and maintenance, storm siren multi-year contract that they didn't know was going to be multi-year at the time, the Glenstone Park Trail rebuild, additional capital project funds expenses from prior year project carryover. That always usually happens. You don't quite finish things up and you carry that expense into the next year. Repairs to the sewer infrastructure and additional insurance fees. We've also received additional hotel motel tax receipts, which will increase our payments to Catch Des Moines and Bravo as it's a percentage. Park and rec programming has increased participation, which will necessitate some additional expenses. And the city will have additional transfers between funds for some of the capital projects. The total additional expenses are $3,311,740, and the additional revenues are $720,510. We've included $3 million in additional transfers. This will not affect the current tax rate, and there will be no increase in taxes for this year due to this.
Thank you. Before we discuss it, we'll have the public hearing on the proposed Second Amendment. Does anybody wish to address council for this specific item? Seeing none, do we have any written communication?
No, sir.
Okay, at this time, we'll close the public hearing and take up consideration of resolution 04-4226. And yeah, good. Thank you for that presentation, Marcia. Really just kind of dotting our i's, crossing our t's, just making the actuals fit, or the projected, clean that up to fix the actual, to match the actuals. I'll spit it out. So any other comments or questions?
Nothing further. I'll move resolution 04-4226, approving the Second Amendment to the Grimes fiscal year 25-26 budget.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call.
Borkerding,
Aye.
Lovelady.
Aye.
DePhillips. Aye. Johansson.
Aye.
Earlbeck.
Aye.
All right, thank you. That passes. That brings us to item 5, third consideration of ordinance 811, amending Grimes Code of Ordinances regarding the amount charged under section 9-15-6 subsection 1 for collection of recyclable materials, and section 9-13-9 subsection 1 for the collection of solid waste.
Yep, so this is our final consideration. As in prior years, Metro Waste will increase the cost to the city for recycling and solid waste fees beginning in July. In the prior years, the city has funded a portion of each household solid waste services from the general fund and used it to subsidize the proprietary fund. For this next year, we've incorporated the full cost of services into the rates. The solid waste fees will increase $1.32 per cart and cost $12.37 per month for each cart at each residence. The recycling fees will increase 49 cents per cart and cost $5.13 per month per cart. The combined monthly increase for fiscal year 27 will be $1.81 per address for each first cart. This allows the proprietary fund to become self-sustaining as our other proprietary funds are.
Okay, thank you, Marcia. Council, any comments or action?
I'll move third consideration of ordinance 811.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call.
Borkerding,
Aye.
DePhillips. Aye. Johansson.
Aye.
Lovelady.
Aye.
Earlbeck.
Abstain.
Okay, that passes. And is there any, is there a final?
Yep. I'll move final passage of ordinance 811.
Second.
All right, roll call, please.
Borkerding,
Aye.
DePhillips. Aye. Johansson.
Aye.
Lovelady.
Aye.
Earlbeck.
Abstain.
And that passes. Thank you for that. That brings us to discussion items. Is there any staff reports?
Mayor, I have no report.
All right, mayor and city council reports. Anyone?
For CIWW, we've been fortunate that we've had rain every other day, so that reduces the need to water people's lawns, which is good for water conservation. So as long as it rains during the week and is dry and sunny on the weekends, I'm happy.
Nothing else. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I move we adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say nay. That passes. We are adjourned. Thank you.